computer on this computer. Good. We're recording. You're ready to go.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. You're looking at our Dallas, Texas Calibration Center. Those of you that are considering doing some of this, just to give you an idea on space, it's roughly about 4,500 square feet. And you certainly don't need that to do individual vehicles, but if you want to do multiple vehicles at one time or multiple systems, it's helpful to have the space. And so just give you kind of a tour here, a little walk around. We've also got some of the aftermarket targeting systems in here that we do some testing with to kind of see how they work and kind of compare them to an OEM process. To be honest with you, I mean, a lot of them are really well made, but they don't have the same. Some of the procedures are different. The targeting sizes can be different. So just some variants. Behind here, you're going to see that's the Bosch setup with the green there. That's the Bosch. This is actually a Subaru eyesight target, so it calls for a whiteboard that you use that. I know you guys get a lot of Subarus up where you're at. Two of these targeting systems are not well known in North America, but they are in Europe. So we have the Hello Gutmann on the left. You get my hand here. That's this one here. This is the Texa setup. So Texa is another one out of Europe. And then we have the Launch and the Autel, which are very similar. So as you can see, even between the aftermarkets, the boards, if you look at this big domino here as an example, they vary slightly, even though that's supposed to be a Volkswagen Audi pattern. They're all a little bit different, you know. They're similar, but they're different sizes. And, you know, when I see the different sizes, I'm kind of like, okay, so what repair procedure do we follow when they're a different size, you know? Starting with Mercedes here, you're going to have all of the factory systems, all the factory targeting systems all the way down. So Acura, Honda, Nissan, and Infiniti. This Hunter board here is actually, Hunter is a tier 1 provider for Nissan Infiniti. So their front radar systems use this mirror board setup. It's not an easy one to travel with. So those of you that are using mobile technicians, watch your Nissan Infiniti stuff. This is a really fragile rig right here. It's actually it's got a mirror on it that can break. Uses a standard alignment head that shoots a laser to the back wheel. And then you've got the black and white targets here. Anything black and white would be a camera target. So this one here on this left-hand side is actually a pedestrian target. So then you go all the way down and you've got, everybody kind of does it a little different. This is Hyundai Kia. Perhaps one of my favorite tools in here, this is the alignment rig for the blind spot monitoring on Hyundai Kia. So this alignment ought to be performed every time a quarter panel is serviced. So if you change a quarter panel, you repair a dent, you want to check the alignment of that radar to make sure it's going to calibrate after you paint it. So you want to make sure you do this before you paint. So it's a really neat setup. So Toyota Lexus, this cross-looking setup here is actually set up when we do the 360 camera on a Lexus or Toyota. Just an example of no standardization here. Every Mazda has 3 different blind spot targets, depending on what platform you use. So you have the 2 that are here, and then this box back here is actually a Doppler. It creates a radar signature that the car can see. So it's a $5,000 target that works on a couple of platforms. And so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to buy stuff like that when you don't see a lot of those vehicles. These big boxes here are the 360-degree mats for a Ford. So if you do a 360 camera on an F-150, that's what you would use there. Volkswagen Audi setup, you can see all the VAS part numbers on here. These boxes house all of the targeting systems for Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche. You can see this is the factory rig for Volkswagen Audi. Give you an idea what that looks like. Very high tech, got tape measures and levels built into it. Pretty wild. So you get 3 brands when you do this one, but it's an expensive one that not a lot of shops are gonna do. But the one over here in the corner I want to show you, this is the Chief Mosaic. We've probably seen some ads from Chief. Very cool concept. This is an AsTech for the software, but this is the rig is fully robotic. So it moves, it centers to the vehicle instead of you centering the vehicle to the rig. It actually moves the rig as a robot. It uses these targets behind here. The targets have a microchip in the back of them, so we can see virtually what target is fixed to the rig at any given time. Still a lot of development to do with this thing, but it's kind of a neat setup that probably some OEMs have some interest in this. Let's see what else we got here. Let me stop for a second. Any questions you guys have? Anything you see? Any further questions?
How are you finding the aftermarket aiming units? Like say that Hunter one, for example, I've been reading quite a bit about it, Jake. Are you, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I mean, are you getting good results? Can you pretty much say, yeah, this is doing the job?
Well, it's no doubt that some of the aftermarket rigs can get a calibration to complete. There's no doubt about that. I mean, obviously there would be mass exodus if they weren't working, right? But the question I have is, how do you defend that? If you're ever in trouble and an aftermarket targeting system is not mentioned in the service manual, how do you defend it? Right? It's kind of like using the wrong rivet gun or the wrong frame machine or the wrong welder, Yeah, it could probably do the job, but will it perform properly, and how do you defend it? That's the question I have. So I can appreciate what the aftermarkets are trying to do. I mean, they're using pieces of aluminum and they're using lasers, and a lot of their stuff is really well built, but it's not approved by anybody. You don't have OEMs looking at that and approving anybody. I don't know that it'll always be that way. I hope it's not, but that's where we're at this point. So I did hear from one OEM that they're looking at a couple of aftermarket rigs, such as the ones in this picture, for approval, and it just hasn't happened yet. So that's kind of where we're at with that, because right now everybody wants to go out and calibrate everything. I think that's kind of dangerous from the skill set required alone. So I look at it like, focus on the top 5 brands that you work on and acquire the OEM target for those five brands. So if you're heavy domestics, Chevrolets, Chryslers, Fords, set up for those cars, and then maybe take on an Asian where it's a static, like a Nissan or a Honda or a Toyota. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to become, do Audi calibrations if you don't see a lot of Audis, So it seems like that's these systems run what, $20,000 to $30,000 to buy, where if you were doing 5 OEMs with factory targeting, you'd be less money than that. So, I think it's kind of like being certified and everything. I think you just focus on specific brands as far as calibration goes, and that's probably the best way to go about it at this point.
Wow.
Then
you guys, like say if we had a bunch of people that said, hey, we'd like to learn how to do these calibrations, do you guys offer training to the industry?
Well, I think we had a big group, then we're certainly going to make arrangements for that. I mean, I think big groups might be a thing of the past these days, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think if we had, we've had big groups here. We had the executives from the SEMA show here, where we had probably, 60, 70 people in this room and went through a variety of different things. So if there was an interest, then yes. And I don't know that it needs to be an in-person event. We can make it a virtual event if that was of interest. We could actually prep a few vehicles with different setups, as far as we could do a front radar, a lane camera, and a 360, and show you a couple of different things, and then move through them as like workstations, So the last couple of presentations I've done, I felt like it's more valuable to actually show you what this stuff is versus doing a PowerPoint. I think that you can pivot quickly. If they had a specific question on Hyundai, Kia, or Nissan, or whatever it was, we could go right to that targeting and show it to you. So they're definitely of interest. If there's somebody you guys want to put that together, we'd be glad to do it.
Like in our marketplace, Jake, I mean, pretty safe to say, GM, Ford, and Chrysler, those three alone, if we were to just go through a couple of training events with the OEM targets and going through the calibrations, that would be a really good start if we could arrange that.
Right. Well, I think there's little details to this stuff that gets lost in the conversation. So Chrysler, for instance, I'll just use that as an example. Mostly dynamic, even though they do have a couple of outliers that are static. If you've ever seen the little eyeball in the middle of a Chrysler, looks like a little glass sphere, if you will, right in the middle. People think you can just plug a scan tool in and go. Well, this is the optic to actually set that up. So as you can see, it suction cups to the front of the eyeball. There's a level in there, and you have to do this before you drive it. Even though it's a dynamic calibrated vehicle, if this isn't right, you're not going to get a pass. It's not going to pass for you. Fords, same thing. People think it's just dynamic. Well, this is actually for their parking sensors. Yes, that is high quality PVC there. It tells you to fabricate this pole and put it in front of the parking sensors, and then measure the response time from the parking sensors, and you get a pass or fail. I mean, I want to choke out some of the people that come out with this stuff. I mean, it's just it's crazy. So the point is that each OEM is going to have different specialty tools that you're going to need to execute the repair. So you don't want to find that out when you're writing the estimate. You want to know, can we do this in house, or is it going to be something we're going to have to plan and sublet, right? So
that's the big challenge for us is we have so many shops subletting the vehicles to the dealership for this stuff. And it's tough enough when you're in the city and you got to run it across town, send 2 people there and 2 people to bring it back.
right.
But our biggest challenge is when we have shops in the rural areas and they got to drive 60, 70 miles to the city to get it done and pick up a stone chip on the way back or hit a deer or who knows what, right? It's just such a time waster, and there's a lot of responsibility on those people's shoulders. So
being able to audit what a dealer is doing for you as well. Remember, it's new to them too. So the dealers are still trying to take in the training on this stuff. From the mechanical perspective, I mean, I spent some time in my life on the mechanical side, and they're really focused on, if there's no DTC, then there's no problem. They think that the car will tell them if there's a problem. And, collision repairers will think, well, it's just, there's no dash light, there's no problem. And both are wrong. So it's one of those things that you have to focus on the operation. If you perform a 4-wheel alignment on this vehicle, then you need to do a lane camera calibration or a radar calibration. If you do a windshield or you take a bumper cover off, how many shops research how to do an alignment? They don't. They just rely on the Hunter machine to tell them what they need. And so if you don't look at the service manual, you miss those critical steps. And then you affect the way the customer uses the vehicle, and they wonder why their car is not the same after a crash. So, like on this Toyota, they glued the parking sensors in. I'm like, man, this thing parks on its own. So if a customer uses that, you could affect the way that works. So you really just focus on the estimate data, and that's why AsTech, we purchased ADAS Think to try and help the industry move through those cars a little quicker and understand, hey, this car, because we did these labor operations, it now requires a lane camera calibration or a radar, right? So trying to make things easier, but it's just been baby steps, as you can imagine.
Well, I know in my career, I don't know how many times I've had people come into the shop and say, gee, I hit that guy pretty hard. How come my airbags never went off? And we've all been there, right? I don't know, maybe the sensor didn't line up or whatever. I'm talking 15, 20 years ago that these conversations were being had. And I'm sure we're seeing the same thing today.
Yeah. Well, another thing that we do is another thing that can create problems is the environmental failures. So you see lots of lights in here. We can make it very bright. We can dim it down. Okay. Toyotas are really sensitive to light. Subarus want light facing their target. So you got to be able to control the lights. As you can see, there's a bunch in here. The other thing is the floor. So the floor is absolute level, and we can write on it. It's a giant dry erase board. So when you're writing out the measurements on the floor, you can capture that in a photo. So if you do the height measurements, the tire pressure, the distance, the target measurement, all that stuff can be written on the floor. And it's also when you're setting up lasers on this Toyota and trying to establishing center line, really helpful to be able to capture that. So I think of like dusty body shops, right? It's really tough to do one of these cars in a dusty body shop or even a parking lot. So we also use very bright string as we do the 360 camera calibrations, especially on Nissan. It's a combination of the scan tool and the radio to do that 360 calibration. And so you actually have to be able to see the string through the radio. And boy, like I said, if I could find the guy who made that idea up, man, I tell you. It's just about the guy who had to fix this thing or insure this thing, So, anyway. Okay, John Luke, I'm done talking. You want to show him some stuff?
Okay.
We can answer questions. I mean, if you guys have something specific you want to see in this room, it's here. So just let us know.
Yeah, and how much time do we got, Tom? So I don't want to.
Well, I booked us for an hour, but if we go over, people got to go, they got to go. But
Okay.
what
No,
I'm
no,
looking at, we've got about 40 minutes.
So that's good. So, all right. So I'm gonna share my screen and with the PowerPoint, and then I'm gonna go through the price range, and also we can talk about the whoever like to get involved in calibration. I mean, how we can support them. Let me see. Okay, you guys can see my screen?
Not
Hold
yet.
up. Now,
We started it. Yep, there you go.
is it full screen?
Yep. For me, it is. It depends on the view that people have got. Everybody there, you put it on speaker view, you'll see the full screen.
Okay.
You just got to set it up for PowerPoint, like
presentation.
presentation mode, Jean-Luc.
Eh?
You got to put it in presentation mode. That's all.
Okay, I'll do that. That work?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So and you guys got aware AsTech been around for a long time, and Jake and I meet the first time. I think it's in was it in 2018 at NACE?
Probably CCIF, Toronto.
Anaheim. First time I met you.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah. So actually, when you look at it, those are all the position statement for the OE, and where they all state that every car need to be pre-scanned. So one thing you can see is the one that's got the AsTech logo on it is that the actually the OE endorsed by writing that AsTech was an approved tool to do the pre-scan, post-scan, and calibration remotely. So, but AsTech is just a tool. In the background, we're using the OE tool. So even if it's not endorsed, we're still using the OE tool. So why AsTech? Actually, there's so much ADAS technology out there right now. We're talking about a lot of information that often aftermarket scan tool cannot reach to those modules. Especially you guys are dealing with the 2021, 2022 that's going to get in your shop soon if it's not already in. So you got a great challenge out there, and we understand that at our level, and that's why we realize that you guys, we cannot deal with aftermarket scan tool. And Jake would tell you, I mean, it would be much cheaper for us to run aftermarket scan tool in the background, and instead of paying everybody every OE for the access to their OE scan tool. So if you look at the trend here, 2021, 60% of the vehicle out there right now that came out in 2021 are equipped with some sort of ADAS system. So if you look at 2022, those are the vehicles that are sold right now. Well, we're talking about 97%. So most of the vehicle right now is going to have ADAS system. So as the business grow 2-3 years down the road, it won't be a question of does this car is equipped with ADAS? Well, they're gonna have all ADAS system. It's like when the airbag came on. You know, it was an option, then it came gradually. Every car had to have it. Same thing with ABS brake. So this is where we are. So if you look at the expense of owning all those OEM tools, actually, and not only having those tools, but you have to keep those tools up to date. You have to make sure your technician, you have somebody in the shop that can use that tool, and it has to be trained to use that tool. So every OE use, you know, different functionality, different way they lay out their tool. Their website can be different, and their update can be different. So we got 290 tech internally, and each of those tech, we got a group of specialists that will be working on specific vehicles. So if you connect your AsTech on a Honda, you will talk to a technician, but the next day if you connect to GM, it will be a completely different technician that it used to work with the GM scan tool versus the HDS. So, and we got 3 guys full-time. Their job is to keep those tools up to date and also look for new tools. So if there's a new tool coming on the market, a new scan tool that one OE is going to come out, well, we're going to buy before you guys going to get the car. So to be sure that we can support you. The other thing we're talking about are 290 tech. Well, with the shortage of technician out there, and even if you got, I'm sure you guys have some really good tech internally, but even if you got a really good tech, he's not necessarily a great tech to work on a BMW or Mercedes or Nissan. So it's always nice to have somebody else that you can reach out and say, hey, I'm doing a troubleshooting for that specific issue on that Nissan, and can you help me? And for sure, the guys that are going to answer the call probably saw that issue last month or the month before, because he's only working on those specific car. So you will be talking to a specialist. So, and I'm not going to talk too much about the lawsuit that you guys had in the state, but we start to hear about story about car reacting strangely with the ADAS system, where somebody drive the car from one location to the dealer to get calibrate, and the camera is hanging on there, and the cars want to change line because the camera is not at the right position. So those things gonna come, and we gonna see some probably some fatality with that new technology. That technology is there to save life, but at the end of the day, it will save life if it's calibrated properly. So this is one of the things. So, and we're talking about 2% of the vehicles that are coming out of collision shop right now, apparently, are calibrated properly. So a lot of them, because of lack of tool, because of lack of notion, of knowledge, they're not completely calibrated properly the way they should be at the OE level. And so, and another thing to look at, this is the trend of the scan tool that are not reporting in blue, is the safety module that are not reporting to the aftermarket scan tool. So if you look at 2018, there's a big jump there. So what happened in 2018, Chrysler came up with the security gateway. So this is why when AsTech come in and we're using the OE scan tool, well, for sure, the reason why we use the OE scan tool is we want to make sure that when we do your pre-scan, we want to make sure that all the modules are reporting. So that's a big difference. So the process to connect that tool, it's fairly easy. So once you got the AsTech tool, you just connect to the OBD2 port and turn the ignition switch on, and start the app on your, oops, I don't have the app here. Start the app on your phone, and you just have to answer a few questions on the app, and some dispatch. As soon as you're gonna turn the ignition switch on, you're gonna see the VIN on the AsTech machine. The dispatch gonna connect that car to the right scan tool, and then from that scan tool, you're gonna connect to the technician that is available for that specific car. So if you're connecting to BMW, you will be linked to the BMW technician. So this whole process take anywhere between 2.5 to 3.6 minutes. So I receive a report every morning of our time, and our average time this morning was around 2.9 minutes. That's the connection. And the full report, by the time you get the full report from the technician in your app and in an email, it will take anywhere between 14 to 18 minutes. And this will include all the trouble code you got, every TSB, and every open recall for that specific car and VIN that you're working on. So, and you will have some recommendation. I was talking earlier about security gateway. This is a good example here where from right to left, you got 3 aftermarket scan tool, and those are the amount of module that are reporting 18, 11, 17, and the console for Nissan was reporting the actually 27 modules. So the best aftermarket scan tool missed 6 module. So when you're doing your estimate and you miss 6 module, you might be off at the end of the day. And when you're going to do your post scan, if you don't see those modules, the car might come up with issue, and you might deliver the car with a problem that the customer is going to come back later on to you.
Jean-Luc, let me help you with one thing there. So one of the things that we've seen as well is the aftermarkets don't have access to the build data. And so why that matters is if you take a Nissan Altima and it's the cheap trim level, but it still has front radar, the cheap car only has emergency braking, right? And then you get into a mid-level trim level and it has emergency braking and intelligent cruise control. And then you get into the highest trim level and it has emergency braking, intelligent cruise control, and Pro Pilot Assist. And so what can happen is if the aftermarket loads the wrong software on the control module on the wrong trim level, then you could have a lot of erroneous fault codes that pop up, or you could kill a module. And so the Pro Pilot cars actually have an electric brake caliper, and they have a little Pro Pilot button on the steering wheel, and that's a good way to kind of identify them. So, you know, it really, the build data matters more than ever. And now the Nissan, the new 21 Rogue and the Sentra both have secure networks on them to where only the factory scan tools talk to those cars. You can only calibrate those cars with factory tools. And even if you have a factory tool and you haven't updated it in a while, that also will not calibrate the vehicle. So the OEMs are getting pretty crazy with these new digital padlocks on these vehicles. And the padlock is not in the scan tool; it's actually in the car. And so in the Nissan's case, when you press the gas pedal twice, it relocks the padlock in the vehicle. So that's the kind of stuff that you know, we're seeing that happen. We know that Subaru has a new platform plan for 21, and that Mercedes also has the E-Class and S-Class. The newest one has some secure networks in it. So we think as more of these vehicles get connected to the internet, you're going to see more secure networks on the vehicle themselves.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great. And the other thing I want to mention, when we get those new scan tools and when we get those new car, actually Jake is the first that have a chance to play with them and actually find the bug that are involved. And one of the things you find at Nissan, you can talk about the Nissan truck you were trying to calibrate.
When the 21 Rogue came out, its rear radar is dynamic calibrated, where previous Nissan and Infiniti vehicles were plug and play. They didn't have a calibration that you had to do. And so on the new Rogue, you actually have to drive it and it has to complete. Well, when we got the Rogue, we directly connected the factory scan tool for Nissan, and the truck would not calibrate. So there was some kind of bug in the software, because what would happen is the scan tool would crash and you'd have to reset it and restart the PC and start over again, and never could get it to complete. And so long story short, we had to notify Nissan, and they pushed out 3 more updates to us, and we finally got that truck to calibrate. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. I mean, and just because it's an OEM doesn't mean that they don't have software problems. That kind of stuff happens. It's not just a Nissan thing either. I've seen it happen with Volkswagen as well. Jean-Luc mentioned new scan tools. I have one in my hand that is not currently available in the US. Get you a good picture of that. This is the new VCI for Nissan and Infiniti vehicles. We've already got one because we got one out of Europe. They've released them in Europe, but they haven't released them in the States yet. So we're trying to stay ahead of this stuff because we know that our customers, collision repairers, get the newest cars in the worst shape. So it's a matter of time before you guys get a car that this scan tool supports. So we want to make sure that we're ready.
Yeah, So the return on investment, actually, if you look at the price of scan tool, if you look at the when you do an estimate, you're gonna make sure you got the right information to write your estimate, and also one of the thing it's we want to be sure that you're gonna be able to finish the work. So this is the menu for actually a few car. But if you want, actually, Tom, I got the menu for every car, all the service we can provide calibration. It can change from one platform to the other one, but I can share with you so you can share with your team everything that we're able to do for each car as a menu. So when you are trying to perform a calibration, you're going to be able to know right away if we support it or not. Okay.
That's something you can send to me for my newsletter, my weekly newsletter?
Yes, I will send to you. Actually, I got one PDF page for each OE, but I will send it to you on one folder so you can use it and share in I think you can share in your newsletter, no problem.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and that's useful information. And at least you know what to do. It's like last week, somebody called me, they mess up with a Volkswagen with an aftermarket scan tool. But I mean, it's not the relation with the aftermarket scan tool. If they would have the OE scan tool, they could mess up even more because they went to play in the coding. If you're familiar with Volkswagen, when you go play in the coding, you can remove all the information that the car need just to run. So the one of the technician went to play in there, and actually we would need actually on our side we would need the OE factory scan tool to be able to recode the car. Otherwise, the car would have to be towed at the dealer and with an expensive bill. So this is a type of thing that you will talk to a Volkswagen specialist that will do it, will support you for this. AsTech, I gonna share. Hold on, I just gonna share my my web page here. Can you see the AsTech? Welcome.
Still see your PowerPoint, Jean-Luc.
Okay, hold on. I'll stop sharing and I'll share it again.
Just share your screen. You should be able to see it.
That's a crazy looking link.
And okay, you see the webpage?
Yep.
Okay, so AsTech, and Jake mentioned we purchased that 2 months ago. So it's a Canadian company based in Toronto. And so Nick, probably you guys had Nick as a speaker. I don't know if he did present to everybody, but I think this is a useful tool where actually you just select your repair order, and in a split second it will run through that. Oops, I guess this one was not working. Hold on, make sure I got there. Let me try this one here. Okay. To hold on. I need to get new file in there. See what it does. You just select your estimate, the PDF you have of your estimate when it's done. And what it will do, it will make sure that you didn't forget any calibration step in your work order, in your repair, in your estimate. So it will tell you according to the equipment and to the parts that you're replacing, if you need to do an alignment on a car, if you need to do a calibration for a camera, any seat sensor calibration need to be done, it will add those into the request. And if you can see here, you got the OE hyperlink, that's a hyperlink to the repair information, to the process of what need to be done on that specific item. So you don't have to search for it. It gives you the link right away. If you actually, for sure, for this one, you need to have an access to all data on this one. If you have an access valid, the hyperlink will work. So this is what the ADAS thing can do. And the other thing, Tom, you did mention, Tom, earlier that people are looking at should they start to do calibration, and how we can help with calibration. Actually, we got a service, a specialized service that only provide calibration for the static calibration. So if you want to put together a calibration center and you want AsTech to support you and guide you step by step with every calibration, we do that. That's a service that we offer. And most of the time, you might need the OEM scan tool to complete the calibration. But for sure, the technician on this side has to connect the, actually has to have the target, and like a lot of work is done in the shop. So we rely on the technician in your shop, you guys, to be able to install the target, measure properly, and we will guide you through the whole process. There's anything, Jake, you want to add on this?
Well, I think that, you know, the fact that we're using a scan tool to install a part, there's only going to be more of that. So especially as we move into electric vehicles, you're going to use scan tools to install radiators, brake calipers, steering components, body parts that move by themselves. I mean, those kinds of things are going to require scan tools. And so we hope that we can expand ADAS Think into capturing all of those things. That, you know, if you put a, you know, the new Infinity that we have in our training class has fly-by-wire steering, and there's 3 calibrations that are not ADAS, but it's required to make the steering system work when you do an alignment. And so we're trying to capture those kinds of things to alert the shop that you need to not only bill for them, but also make sure you do them.
Yeah, well, an example, one of the example I got actually on this, I mean, you replace some front light on the BMW. I mean, the VIN number, it's in those front lights. So, and you replace a ECU on a Toyota, on a Nissan, you need to write the VIN, and you need the OEM scan tool to write the VIN.
John Luke, I caught one the other day that required a scan tool to put an exhaust system on. It was awesome. So basically there's a flap in the exhaust that opens and closes electronically. And when the engine's cold, it only opens up one side of the dual exhaust. And then as it heats up, it opens up both. And so the shop was putting on an exhaust system, and it was on a BMW. I think it was an X5. And we had to use the scan tool to initialize that flap in the exhaust. So only going to be more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
My understanding is on these calibrations, Jean-Luc and Jake, is that you guys offer them like a la carte. Like if I have a vehicle in the shop, then the pre-scan, the post-scan, and I've got things that need to be recalibrated, you guys, and I know I might be getting ahead of myself here, but I know that Jean-Luc, you and I talked about that you can offer those calibrations based on what the shop needs. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of that around dynamic for sure. We do a lot of those, probably 400 to 500 of those a day already. And then, you know, the static one becomes a little more tricky because the shop has to have things on their side to make that work, and specifically the targeting systems. So that's the kind of stuff that, you know, we want to work with those shops individually to help them understand that. And that's what this group of shops is here today. They're building a calibration center, and so they're trying to set up for the brands that they work on the most.
So the dynamic recalibration, how do you keep the machine attached to the internet? You just have to have your cell phone and create a hotspot, or how do you do that?
Cellular, like a cellular hotspot to keep us connected while you're going through it.
Okay. Yep. And on the dynamic stuff then, which I think a lot of cars have that, you probably could do that on a number of pretty much any car. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's challenging on some of the gateway cars because we have to, especially with you're using direct connect, right? So if we use the factory tool directly connected, you have to make sure that you're connected to the internet in your center to open the gateway before you go drive, because you can't open it once you're on the road because you don't have internet. So it is challenging. You got to make sure that all of those things are working nicely. And we have a really cool mobile app that speaks in multiple languages. We actually developed it in Europe. So if we're dealing with, folks in Quebec, we can actually speak to them in French on what we want them to do on their end of it. And then also our reporting can be delivered in French also.
Perfect. I got a question here, guys. What are the hours of the AsTech Center for Calibrations? What are your daily hours?
I think they quit sooner than our normal hours. I want to say 5 o'clock Central Time is when they do the last calibration.
Mm-hmm.
So that may not always be that way, but right now we're just kind of watching what they're doing from a volume perspective. We don't want to have these guys sitting here if they're not doing something,
Yep.
I will confirm that and get back to you on this.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it recently, but I think that was the last time I saw it. It was that.
Oh, did you guys can see the AsTech PDF here? Frequent asked question.
John Luke, can you show them where to find that on the website? So if they want to download it?
Yeah, sure. Let me see.
We'll just pull a screen, and that way if they want to download it on their end, they can. We have an email group that manages pricing questions. So if you don't see what your question is on this sheet, then you can send an email to, I think it's pricing@astech.com. And you can actually answer. We have people that manage that. So.
Yeah, there is actually. But that PDF, actually, I can send it with, to you as well, Tom, so you can share with your group.
Yep.
Can you see the AsTech website here?
Yep.
Okay, if you go here on the right side where it says menu, you go down to resource, and you go down to AsTech Canadian user pricing view, and it will open the PDF here.
Somebody asked about retail versus wholesale. It's retail pricing. We don't have a wholesale price. We have an on-time pay incentive. So it's when people pay on time.
Yeah. So what we did actually last September, they lower the price quite a bit from the retail price to make it more accessible for the insurance carrier to be able to cover those fees. And it makes sense to use AsTech instead of subletting the scan to the dealer group, to the dealership. So, and that had started actually October 1st. And the price is $65 retail. And when you pay within 30 days, everybody got a 25% discount. So you end up to pay about $48 something for the pre-scan, and same thing for the post-scan. So if you got a Porsche, then it will be an extra $135. I don't want to know how much it costs to bring your car to Porsche and to get it scanned. I'm sure it's much higher than that. So,
well, John, I was actually the guy that had to get those tools for us, and we bought 5 of them in one shot, and they were $32,000 a piece, and had to be bought through the dealer, and they only work on Porsche. So that's why we had to raise our price on Porsche and some of the premium brands.
So, and there's all the other services that are offered here are available. So if you want to do OEM diagnostic service, this you will be talking to one of our specialists according to the brand you're working on. So it would be $95, and they will help you resolve any issue you have in a car and to bring the car back on the road.
Tom,
So-
the easy way to remember this is basically we made the pricing cheaper for a car that there are no issues. So in other words, if we scan the car, it doesn't have any DTCs active, there's nothing in live data that looks out of whack, the car is clean, then that vehicle will be 65 Canadian. If there are DTCs active in the vehicle, you'll see a charge for 65, and then you'll see a charge for OEM diagnostics to figure out what those fault codes are. And you'll only see that once per VIN. So if they do a pre and post scan, you're only going to see that one time, typically on the pre-scan if they do a pre-scan. And then when we go through to wrap up that vehicle on post-scan, then we'll wipe out the fault codes, initialize the steering angle, do the seat calibrations, the stuff that you need to do. What we tried to do is weed out the cars that didn't have any problems and make those cheaper. That's all the pricing is about. That's an easy way to remember it.
And again, there's a premium price for Porsche. So that's what I heard, 269 Canadian. So all those are Canadian prices to make it easy for you to deal with. So, and those are all the service that we're offering and all the questions you can have regarding pre-scan, post-scan, and everything that we're able to do.
GM requires us to pay a fee for programming. Programming doesn't happen in collision a lot, but it does happen. It does happen some, so mainly around airbags and things like that. But if we have to program or reflash a module, there is a fee that is direct pass through right to GM. There's no discount. There's no markup. We literally just collect it and give it to GM. So, like I said, it doesn't happen a lot, but that does. We have that in the pricing as well.
Yeah. So it's a 5629 as you can see on the screen here for the calibration. So it's a cost per VIN because GM changed their, I think 3 or 4 years ago, they changed their way they do business. It used to be a subscription fee, and now they go with a VIN. So if you call in 3 months and there's an update with the same VIN, well, we won't have to pay again because we already pay for that VIN.
Yep.
Just had a question from one of the people on the call asking, does your invoice list a retail and a wholesale price?
No, we have an accounting copy that talks about that. It's important to understand that's not a discount. That's an on-time pay incentive. So if the shop doesn't pay on time, they pay full price. So, unfortunately, there are some shops that do that. So I don't want to miscommunicate that as a discount that's guaranteed every time. You have to pay on time to get that. And so we reflect that in the accounting copy that comes with the service request.
So it's basically a prompt pay price.
Yes, it's a prompt
if
pay.
you don't pay on time,
Right.
Maybe
it's how you manage.
Get Luigi to collect it.
When you do 7,000 cars a day, it's how you manage your AR. So
yeah.
And actually, most of our customer, they want to be charged on their credit card. So this way, they're sure they got a 30-day discount. And one thing, if some of you guys are on the call, you probably noticed that there's an exchange rate on the card because we're processing with the US bank right now. So I'm working on that to be able to process directly with the Canadian card, so we won't have to have that exchange rate right now. So eventually this will be solved. So
so when that person gets a scan done, though, they do get a copy of the invoice. Say if I pay with my credit card,
yep,
you're going to give me a paid receipt for the wholesale price. Is that correct?
Correct. And we do a statement on a monthly basis so you can reconcile. We're trying to get cleaner in that department, guys. So please be patient with us. It's a lot of transactions in one day. And so we're trying to get better at that. Another thing that I want to see, I've already mentioned it to our leadership, is that every OEM scan tool has the capability of printing out the results from the tool. And a lot of them have the logos of that OEM on that report. So in other words, Honda will have badging, Mercedes-Benz has badging, right? And so we're trying to incorporate that with our invoice, and you would get both. So you could prove that an OEM tool was used on that car. And so I believe that would be the only ones that were capable of doing that. So that's what we're working on currently.
So when I'm working on a job, Jake, and I put the job number in, that gets also identified on the invoice?
Yes. So it's an RO number or, you know, a VIN, or the VIN is on there as well. We also track, for our customer's sake and our sake, what scan tool was used on what day and went by who. So the serial number of each OE tool that was used on that vehicle is tracked every day.
Good.
Yep.
And actually, just to mention when we scan a car, I mentioned the 15, 18 minute. As soon as it's done, you will receive an email with the invoice, and you will receive an email also with the report. So you will receive that $65 invoice, and you will receive the complete report that match the invoice.
Good. How do we instigate a dynamic road, road test, or how would you call it, recalibration? Like, so we get the report back and we need to do seat sensors or whatever. Do they communicate that with your device, or do we got to email them?
No, you can use the mobile app is the best way to do it, to order the service. You know, you could, emailing it doesn't work. I mean, you can send a manual request through the website. There's a little button that allows you to do that. But by far the best way to do it is the mobile app.
So on my iPhone, I just go look up AsTech on my store. If I got a Google Android phone, I go to their store and pull it down. Eh?
It's called AsTech Mobile. That's the one you want to download.
Perfect.
But there's two applications. There's AsTech Global and there's AsTech Mobile. So the global is for the glass portal for people that are only doing glass and camera calibration.
Warren's got it. Yep. Warren, so you would use your AsTech credentials to log in. Your username and password are on the back of your AsTech, and that would identify your shop and username and all that kind of stuff. It should stay logged in once you log into it the first time, and then you just tell us what you need, post scan, whatever it might be, you know.
And I don't know if you, it's hard to see, but this is the application. And on my phone, it tells me that how many scan I got complete, and I can go look at the detail. Actually, the detail on this on the phone is not that great. It's better to log into the website or even looking at your email. And you were asking when you request a service. Actually, most of the time when you're gonna do a pre-scan or a post-scan, we will send you the technician on our end will tell you what needs to be done on this car. So he might be able to tell you, because if you did this, and this, and he will call you on a pre-scan for sure, and it will tell you what should be done and what you have to expect regarding this car.
Luke, can you show them the face of that app again, just the green part? So something else that's really slick is that when you plug this in and the serial number, the VIN number pops across the screen, it'll automatically populate that car into that green tab right there. So the AsTech knows that it's connected to that Avalon behind me, and it'll put the VIN in there and all that stuff. And so all you have to plug in is the mileage, the insurance company, and what do you need, pre-scan, post-scan, whatever it is, and your RO number, and you can hit send. So it makes it really easy where you're not having to copy VIN numbers and select engine and all that kind of stuff. The AsTech will do that for you. So plug it in, make sure the AsTech doesn't beep at you. If it beeped at you, you didn't do something right. You didn't have the key on, is usually what we see. Make sure your battery's supporting the vehicles when you do that. And then you should be able to complete everything through the app, and then we're going to be on it. You don't have to sit there and babysit it. So
I had a comment here from one of our listeners. He said, further to the hot spotting for doing a dynamic calibration, I've inquired about this before with the tech, and I'm scanning. I've been told that it can't happen. Just curious if I request it, will they attempt this? You need the app to do that? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah, we use a different team to do the remote calibrations that's different than the pre and post diagnostic team. So in other words, if you're a customer with us, and I've always been a pre and post customer, only doing pre and post scans, we actually have a different AsTech that we will send you that is pointed at the remote calibration team. So I think, Bryce, if that would help you, let us know, and we'll get you an AsTech that is specific to just calibration. And typically what we do is we label them like this so you don't get them mixed up. And when you need to do a calibration, pair that one to your air card, and then the remote tech will call you. It's a completely different workflow. They talk to you through the mobile app. They tell you, are you ready to drive? Go ahead and start the engine. They walk you through it so that you make sure you complete the calibration properly.
Okay, just so I understand, you're saying you use a different tool for that?
It's the same tool. It's just today it's pointed at a different portal. We don't charge our customers for that AsTech. We just send it to them. And then that way we can, and they have to be existing AsTech customers, but we don't charge them for a second AsTech. So that's something we're working out internally to where all AsTechs will work on the two portals, but we have to make sure we don't get it mixed up with our core business, which is remote pre and post scanning.
Right.
So,
Because like in his case, he's saying like they're out of town. They're about 60 miles out from the city. And if they could do a lot of those calibrations themselves, saving taking the vehicle to the, because SGI does pay us for travel time. It would save SGI money, would save the shop money, would speed up the repair.
we'll get him
So
hooked up. We can do that. That's something that our business was literally built in the remotest parts of the country, and places like Montana, and that because of the lack of dealer bandwidth out there. So we're built to help guys like that. Make sure you got a good hotspot and good cellular.
Yeah,
I'm
so
glad that we had this conversation because I had no idea this was possible.
Yep, we do.
Yeah,
We do
actually,
like I
what
said,
you
about
need to
600 of
know-
those a day.
Go ahead, Jake.
So, no, sorry, go ahead.
So actually, if you're doing a lot of calibration, for sure, if you're doing once a year, maybe you don't need that second device. But if you think you're going to start to do a lot of calibration, reach out to me. I make sure I send you a second device, and this way you don't have to worry about it. So we make sure that the device point on the right portal, and it's a different team as well. Now, this being said, we're working in an update where that device you will have the same device eventually. By the end of this year, you will have the same device that will connect to, depending on what work you want to do, you will be able to only use the single device eventually, but it's not done yet.
Wow, good to know. Because I was at a shop early this week. They had, I believe, at least 5 cars out of their shop to get calibrations done. Now, some of them might be static ones, which it's got to go to the dealer, right? But it's the dynamic ones that we could eliminate. If we could eliminate half of them, that would be a great thing.
Well, Tom, from our perspective, unlike competitors, we're not just turning people loose to do calibration. We want to know that they know what they're doing and that they are doing their part of the job properly. So they're prepping the car properly. They're grabbing the tire pressures, all the things, and we train them on that. We don't just turn them loose. And so we're being very selective and careful with who we will do calibration with. This isn't just clearing a DTC. I mean, we're setting up a safety system in this car. I have to know that the person on the other end of that wire knows what we're doing. And so that's why it's, I hate to say it's kind of the good old boy network on who's doing it, but we're being careful who we're working with.
I got one comment here, Jake, where the guy has an aftermarket calibration system. He wants to know if your AsTech tool could work with that.
Well, I mean, not to say, like I said before, it's not to say that it wouldn't work, but I look at it like, how would you defend it? If you had 2 people hurt and it was because of a calibration mistake or something like that, they're going to want to know what was used, what kind of tooling was used. And in the service manual, it lines out each SST or special service tool has a number. So in Nissan's case, it's J numbers. You have to have the J numbers for that car, and you have to be able to prove that you use the correct tooling on that car. And when you start adding variables like aftermarket targeting, how do you defend that? I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm saying how you defend it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But Harv, we can talk about that one and see how we can help you. Like I said, some of these OEM target systems, depending on which one you're talking about, they're not super expensive to do it the right way, to do it by the OE. A little more work on your end, but it's definitely doable.
The thing is, if we do it and we rely on your aftermarket scan tool, on your aftermarket target, AsTech cannot take responsibility for it. So, at this level, yes, maybe there is a functionality that you cannot do with your aftermarket scan tool because it's a 2022 and only us can do it for you. We might do the process. but we cannot be responsible for using the wrong target or the wrong target size or wrong distance or whatever can go wrong with this car.
Another question here. Have you guys compared an aftermarket target system to the OEM target system?
Yes. They must have joined late. Here you go. Which one you want to see?
But have you
We
compared
have
them?
auto, we have anything you want. We've got it. So
But
the
have you
answer,
done the calibration with the aftermarket one and then used the factory one? Is there a difference?
we have. We even, let me show you this thing over here. So this target over here is an automatic
We
emergency.
don't see your screen.
Oh, look at my camera.
Hold on.
See this right here? Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
This is an automatic emergency braking target. So it's a fake Camry. Look. It's a fake Camry. You can actually aim a car at it and hit it. So to answer the question, yes, we have. And we found that the aftermarket targeting systems will hit that target, and sometimes the OEs don't. The OEs always work. It's kind of like OEM fenders and aftermarket fenders. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So we have tested them, trust me, because it's expensive to try and scale this. When you try to buy all the OE stuff, really expensive. You would love to see something universal work.
So technically what you're saying, Jake, is that if I have a shop, I could buy the factory targets.
Yes.
And as long as I had a shop like what you have there with enough space and the floor right and the colors right, you guys could do the static
Correct. We do that today.
calibrations. But it's not just having the equipment, you still got to have the space to do it properly. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. And like I said,
Probably should have a wheel alignment machine.
the alignment machine, that's an expensive one. So we ask the shops that, you either want to own the alignment and do it internally, or have a really good partner that you can verify the alignment at their place, get the printouts, just make sure it's done, So the floor is another one, making sure you can write on the floor to illustrate all the work when you do a static calibration, that kind of stuff. We have myself and Mike Anderson actually built a class for Nissan that's hands-on, where we have 5 broken Nissans in there, and the person has to come through and figure out what we broke, and then they have to calibrate the vehicles. And we test them on lane camera, front radar, and 360-degree camera. So that's a good one to take. Nissans aren't like the easiest. They're not the hardest. They're kind of in the middle. So I would not start somebody out on an Audi or Volkswagen. They're pretty challenging. Toyota's not too bad. Honda's not too bad. And then domestics are fairly simple as well. So, this is kind of like aluminum repair. It's not hard. It's just different. And it's a new skill set. And, we just have to face it, so.
One thing, Jake, are we ever going to see technology advance to the point where these targets kind of fix themselves, where they calibrate themselves? Is that ever going to happen?
Yeah, we've already seen some changes starting on the 21 Toyota products. So starting with the 21 Highlander, they offer the shop options. So in other words, you have the option of a static calibration or a dynamic. So depending on, I'm trying to find the target here. So depending on where you are in the country, certain areas it's tough to do static because you don't have the floor space. In other areas, it's tough to do dynamic because you live in a heavily congested area. So Toyota is actually giving you an option to do either or, depending on what you're working on. So starting with 21 Highlanders, we're already seeing some of that happening where OEMs give the repairer an option. Somebody had a question here. Did every aftermarket target fail to calibrate, or just some? So just some did. We had some that passed. The problem is the process was not repeatable. So you calibrate the same car 3 times in a row, 2 times out of 3, it would hit the target. So it's hard. It's kind of like testing airbags. It's hard to test emergency braking. You can test intelligent cruise control. You can test ProPilot assist and things like that. But now you're on the road with other cars, and it just becomes a slippery situation. Where do we buy OEM targets? You buy the targets either through the dealer using part numbers. So an example, everybody write that part number down. You're going to love that one. That one is bought through Kia Hyundai, and that's the radar alignment tool for the rear quarter panel radars. So you can buy it directly from them. This is Toyota. This is Nissan stuff. Nissan, you can get theirs through TechMate, and that's their online resource. Same thing a dealer buys their dealer tools through. They're open to everybody. They're not protected by, you have to be a dealer or anything like that. So good question.
Cool. Well, this has been very enlightening. Any other comments out there from everybody? Are you guys kind of totally scared or totally amazed or saying, wow, this is pretty cool?
Please don't throw up on your computers, guys. This is an area to learn new skills and be profitable from it and help our customers. I mean, it's good times. It's not negative. So
yeah. The other thing I want to mention, Tom, to your group, anybody want to get involved in calibration, they want to look at it on the business side, they need information. We have some calibration location across the US. We have few calibration where we partner with, and we're looking for business opportunity where we can partner with you guys. You might have some specific area where, you know, it would be a great place where people can get their car calibrate and there's enough space and it's clean. And we will look at the business opportunity and we will partner with you guys to run one of those calibration center.
Excellent. Good to know. Yeah, we have a couple of places in Saskatoon that I know one guy's ordered the Hunter equipment, and have another shop that is looking at possibilities. It's always hard when you're dealing again with aftermarket parts. I agree with what Jake says. It's just like aftermarket parts in cars. Some fit good, some don't fit good. You don't know till you get it. But
there's not
nice
any
to know about the OEM stuff. Sorry?
There's not any of them that cover every system for every OEM too. And
Right.
So when you're trying to, it can do front radar and lane camera, but it can't do 360, right? So, you know, you can go spend a boatload of money on this stuff and then not be able to cover everything that you need. And so where I look at it like is start with one manufacturer and learn as much as you can, and then start auditing the dealers around you. Are they doing it properly, right? And you need to understand what good looks like and what bad looks like. If I took everybody out to the parking lot and said, this car had a frame rail put in it, what are we going to look for? We're going to look for joining methods, sectioning locations, cavity wax. I mean, we're going to go down the list. And that's where we've got to get with calibration. We got to know that that car had a fuel requirement. Did it get a full tank of fuel? Right? We got to know that the windshield had to be cleaned, the tire pressures had to be gathered, all those things. And when you go through the service manual, it will prep you on all of those things. And so when we're auditing our dealership partners, I have seen some scary stuff at dealers. I have seen them literally take a line and paint it on the floor and drive the cars up to the line, set up the target and push the button. I've seen them take the targets, not put them on the radar boards like they're supposed to, put them on a wall, drive up to the wall and hit the button. And so you're going to see a variety of different ways that dealers are doing this. And remember, it's new to them too. So as a repairer, if I'm working with a dealer in my market, I'm going over there with my camera and I'm going to photograph the calibration being done so that I know my customer got a good calibration, right? So start with one brand and learn on from there.
Good. Well, that's great. Any other questions from our folks on the call? I think that's it for now, guys. Jake, I really appreciate this. This is just a fantastic amount of information.
We'll
changing.
You guys here one day. You guys come on down to Texas. We'll have some barbecue and show you around.
That'd be awesome. Well, COVID permitting, would be nice to do a little road trip for sure. Thanks again, Jake. Thanks again, Jean-Luc. I await your information. You'll send me those PDFs, and we'll be in touch with you guys for another tour and another visit in the next little while.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a great evening.
You bet.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. If you have any question on AsTech, bye-bye.